Story 1.
Ada for supporting my nephew after he taught his golden child brother a lesson he will never forget? Note: I am posting from my girlfriend's account because I do not have one. Hope no one gets confused by that. Context: I am 31 and my brother is 40, and he have two sons, Jack 16 and James 13. Jack was born when my brother was still in college. He didn't want a child at that time. He and his girlfriend struggled for a while, managing their studies and raising a child. Thankfully, our parents were supportive and helped him. I also helped in any way I could. Eventually, he finished his studies, landed a job at 27, and got married to his girlfriend. Then their second child, James, was born. Both of them spoiled him a lot. Whenever our parents or I said anything, they claimed James was their planned child, and since they were in a good position, James deserved it. At the same time, they neglected Jack. They gave James expensive gifts, toys, clothes, snacks, and everything. The saddest part is that Jack never once complained. I watched that kid be happy just because his brother was happy opening his gifts. James, on the other hand, was spoiled rotten. He constantly compared his things to Jack's, and if Jack ever got something good from someone, he wanted it too. This problem kept growing. The negligence towards Jack worsened, and James started taking advantage of it. He began getting Jack grounded for things he did, and their parents always believed James no matter what. Over the years, I saw the sparkle in Jack's eyes fade. Now the incident happened this Christmas. To be clear, I love both of my nephews. I don't approve of James's behavior, but I blame the parents, not the kid. So for Christmas, I bought both of them a Nintendo Switch. Jack had wanted one for years, and he almost cried when he got it. He hugged me and thanked me, but James hated it, saying, "I wanted a PS5, not this," and threw it away. I didn't care because I did my part. Whatever he did with his gift was none of my concern. I was not going to enable this kid like his parents did. A few days after Christmas, Jack came knocking on my door. The kid was crying and shaking. I let him in, calmed him down, and asked him what happened. To keep it short, after I gave them both a Nintendo Switch, Jack was too happy with it. He played The Legend of Zelda whenever he had time, and he was having so much fun. That didn't sit well with James. To ruin Jack's fun, James broke his own console and cried to their mom, claiming that Jack broke it. Their mom believed him, snatched Jack's console, gave it to James, and grounded Jack. Jack just lost it this time. Years of unfair treatment finally got to him. He grabbed James by the neck and started choking him. He said he didn't know what came over him, but his mom's screaming and beating couldn't stop him. He just saw red. He started screaming at James, demanding him to tell the truth. James was struggling and begging Jack to release him, and finally James admitted the truth. Jack let go. James was left gasping for air, and Jack ran away, straight to my apartment. After a while, I received a phone call from my brother asking me to send Jack home because he had a lot to answer for. Jack wanted to return home to face the consequences alone, but I went with him. When we arrived, I saw James visibly terrified of Jack. He had never faced consequences for his actions before, and it looked like Jack's anger had truly scared him. My brother started screaming at Jack, but I stopped him. I asked James in front of everyone why he did what he did. He didn't say anything at first, but when I pushed, he finally admitted. Jack was having too much fun, and it irritated him. That kid was so spoiled that someone else's happiness bothered him. His mom started to defend him, saying, "Why, he's just a kid," and blah, blah. I stopped her and sent Jack outside to sit in my car. Then I let my brother have it. I told him everything: how he had failed as a father, how he had neglected Jack, how he had spoiled James to the point of making him a terrible human being. My brother just listened. He didn't say a word. His wife tried to say something again, but this time he shut her up. It looked like reality had finally hit him. He finally realized his younger son was becoming a terrible person. I told him that if they hated Jack so much, I could take him in. Then I left and took Jack back to my apartment. Now Jack is here with me. His mother has been blowing up my phone, saying I was cruel to James and that I shouldn't meddle in their family affairs. She accused me of favoritism toward Jack. I didn't reply to her. I haven't heard anything from my brother yet. Maybe he's still processing his mistakes. For now, Jack is with me, playing games, studying. He's such a great kid. And if his parents don't want him back, I plan to support him until he graduates and gets on his feet.
Story 2.
I found a hidden room in my house. It shouldn't exist. I bought an old house last year, one of those creaky, too cheap to make sense deals that you just know has a history. But I was desperate, and the place had a strange charm to it. The floors groaned, the walls whispered in the wind, and sometimes at night I swore I could hear faint shuffling somewhere beyond the walls. But old houses make weird noises, right? I convinced myself it was nothing. Until I found the room. I was rearranging furniture in the guest bedroom when I knocked a bookshelf too hard against the wall. The impact made a hollow sound, a very hollow sound. Confused, I knocked again. The noise was different from the rest of the wall. Something was behind it. I should have stopped there, called a contractor, let someone else handle it. But curiosity has always been my worst trait. It took a crowbar and a lot of effort, but eventually the section of the wall gave way, revealing a doorway. There was no door, just a dark, yawning space that seemed to breathe cold air. My stomach twisted as I peered inside. It was a room, a hidden room that should not have been there. Inside, the walls were covered in old, decayed wallpaper that had once been white but was now sickly yellow. The floor was coated in dust, yet something about it felt off, like it had been recently disturbed. But the worst part? The entire back wall was lined with mirrors, tall, thin mirrors side by side, reflecting the empty room back at me. Except, I wasn't in the reflection. I stared at the mirrors, my breath caught in my throat. The room was there, perfectly replicated, but I wasn't. The doorway behind me was reflected, the dust-covered floor, the dim glow of the hallway light stretching into the forbidden space. But I was missing. My legs locked in place as my mind struggled to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe the mirrors were dirty, maybe the angle was weird. Maybe... Then something moved, not in my reality, in the reflection. I saw it, a figure stepping into the room. It moved cautiously, its posture eerily familiar, as if it was the one discovering the room for the first time. And then it stopped, right where I was standing. My breath hitched, and the air in the room seemed to thin. I wanted to run, but my body refused to obey. The figure in the mirror slowly lifted its head. I couldn't make out a face, just a horrible absence where one should be. Then, as if noticing my presence, it tilted its head. And then it smiled. A grotesque, jagged grin that stretched impossibly wide. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall behind me. The sound must have startled the thing because its head snapped toward me, though I wasn't in the reflection. But somehow it knew I was there. And then it started moving toward the glass, not just in the reflection. Something moved behind the mirrors. I heard the faintest scrape of something pressing against the other side, a soft, deliberate sound, like fingers dragging against the glass, testing for weakness. I ran. I don't remember how I got out of that room. I don't remember boarding up the entrance. But I must have, because when I came back to my senses, I was standing in the hallway, hammer in hand, breath coming in ragged gasps. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination, that stress and exhaustion were playing tricks on me. But last night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again. The shuffling, the soft, patient scrape of something dragging its fingers along the wall, testing, waiting. And when I worked up the courage to glance at the mirror across my bedroom, just for a second I saw something impossible. The reflection of my bedroom door. It was open, but in reality it was still shut.
Story 3.
I always thought my family was normal, until the night everything unraveled. It started with a single phone call, one that shattered the life I thought I knew. By the time I hung up, I realized my entire childhood had been built on a lie. Growing up, my family seemed like the picture-perfect household. My dad was the hardworking provider, my mom the nurturing caregiver, and my older sister, Emily, my role model. We had traditions, Sunday dinners, summer road trips, and game nights that always ended in laughter. I thought we were close. I thought we were happy. But behind the smiles, something was rotting. And I was the last to know. It all started on a random Tuesday night. I was at home scrolling through my phone when my mom's voice trembled through the house. "We need to talk," she said, her eyes darting toward my dad. My sister sat stiffly on the couch, gripping her phone like it was her last lifeline. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then came the call. My dad picked up his phone, barely muttering a greeting before going silent. His face drained of color, his hand trembling as he slowly put the phone on speaker. A voice crackled through the line, a woman's voice. "I know this is a shock, but I thought you should know. I have a son, and he's yours." My stomach lurched. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My sister let out a sharp breath. And my father? He just sat there, frozen, caught in the wreckage of his own choices. The silence stretched unbearably before my mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long?" 16 years, the woman on the phone replied. My heart slammed against my ribs. 16 years. That meant my father had another child, a son, who had been living in the shadows of our perfect family. The betrayal clung to the air like a thick fog, suffocating and inescapable. Then came the real bombshell. My sister stood up, shaking, and turned to my mother. "You knew, didn't you?" My mother's silence was louder than any scream. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My chest tightened as realization crashed down on me. My mother had known about this affair. Maybe not from the beginning, but for long enough. And she had chosen to stay, to pretend, to lie. My father finally found his voice. "It was a mistake," he said weakly. "I was young. It was before—" "Before what?" I snapped. "Before you decided we were worth being faithful to? Before you built this perfect family on a foundation of lies?" Tears welled in my mother's eyes. "I wanted to protect you," she whispered. "Both of you." Emily scoffed. "Protect us from what? The truth?" I stood up, my mind spinning. I had spent my entire life admiring my father, trusting my mother, looking up to my sister. And now, every memory felt tainted. Every road trip, every family dinner, every word of advice. It was all built on something fake. The woman on the phone cleared her throat. "He wants to meet his father," she said softly. "He deserves that much." My mother flinched like she'd been struck. My father ran a hand through his hair, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know who to side with. I wanted to hate my father, but I saw the shame in his face. I wanted to defend my mother, but she had kept this secret for years. And my sister, she had known longer than I had and carried that burden alone. Everything felt broken. That night I packed a bag and left. I needed space, time to think, time to figure out if my family was something I could ever trust again. The house I grew up in no longer felt like home. I don't know what happens next. Maybe my father will meet his son. Maybe my mother will find a way to forgive him, again. Maybe I'll come back. Or maybe some things are too broken to fix. All I know is this. The truth has a way of coming out. And when it doesn't just set you free. It tears everything apart first.
Story 4.
It all began with a memo. Our new HR director, Linda, had decided to revitalize workplace culture by enforcing the company dress code, a dusty 20-page document that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. The memo was clear. All employees must adhere strictly to the dress code policy. Non-compliance will result in disciplinary action. At first, no one paid attention. The dress code was a joke, filled with outdated rules like no denim of any kind and ties mandatory for male employees. Most of us ignored it, assuming it was another tone-deaf HR initiative that would fizzle out in a week. But Linda wasn't joking. She started patrolling the office like a hawk, scrutinizing everyone's outfits. She called out Sarah in accounting for wearing open-toed shoes, a safety hazard, according to the policy, and sent Greg from IT home for wearing a polo shirt, collared shirts only. The office was in an uproar, but Linda was relentless. Then, one fateful Tuesday, she targeted me. I was wearing a perfectly professional blouse and slacks, but Linda stopped me in the hallway, her eyes narrowing. "Your blouse is sleeveless," she said, pointing to the policy on her clipboard. Page 12, Section 3. All tops must have sleeves. Consider this a verbal warning. I was furious. My blouse was fine. It was 90 degrees outside, and even the CEO had rolled up his sleeves. But Linda was power tripping, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. That's when I decided to play her game. I printed out the entire dress code policy and studied it like a law student prepping for the bar exam. If Linda wanted to enforce the rules, I was going to enforce all of them. The next day, I showed up to work in full compliance. And I mean full compliance. The policy required business professional attire, so I wore a three-piece suit, complete with a pocket watch because why not? It also stated that accessories must be minimal and tasteful, so I carried a single pen and a notepad. No phone, no keys, no wallet. But the real fun began when I started calling out everyone else. The policy prohibited excessive fragrance, so I reported Linda for her overpowering perfume. It banned visible tattoos, so I pointed out the CEO's wrist tattoo, a tiny dolphin he'd gotten on a drunken vacation. It even required closed-toe shoes at all times, so I tattled on the entire sales team for wearing loafers. The office descended into chaos. Linda was inundated with complaints, and the CEO was furious. He called an emergency meeting, demanding to know why productivity had plummeted. That's when I dropped the bomb. I handed him a stack of reports, each one detailing a dress code violation I'd documented over the past week. "I was just following the policy," I said innocently. Linda made it clear that rules are rules. The CEO's face turned red as he flipped through the reports. He turned to Linda, who was sweating bullets. "Is this true?" he demanded. Linda stammered, trying to defend herself, but the damage was done. The CEO revoked the dress code policy on the spot and sent Linda packing. But the drama didn't end there. A few days later, strange things started happening. My desk was vandalized, papers shredded, drawers emptied, and a cryptic note left behind. "You should have minded your own business." Then, I started receiving anonymous emails, threatening to expose me for sabotaging the company. The final straw was when I found my car keyed, the words "snitch" etched into the paint. I went to HR, but they were useless. Linda's replacement was a nervous wreck, and the CEO was too busy dealing with the fallout to care. That's when I discovered the truth. While cleaning out Linda's old office, I found a hidden folder labeled "Confidential." Inside were documents linking her to a rival company, emails, financial records, and a detailed plan to destabilize our company from within. Linda hadn't just been power tripping, she'd been sabotaging us all along. I took the folder to the CEO, who immediately launched an investigation. But by then, the damage was done. Key employees had quit, clients had pulled out, and the company was teetering on the edge of collapse. Now, I'm stuck in a nightmare of corporate espionage, blackmail, and betrayal. I don't know who to trust, and every move I make feels like a step closer to disaster. So, Reddit, here's my question. How far would you go to enforce the rules? And what would you do when those rules lead you into a trap?
Story 5.
It all started with an email. You know the kind. Vague, passive-aggressive, and dripping with condescension. My boss, Karen, yes, her real name, and yes, she lived up to every stereotype, had a habit of sending these gems at 11:59 p.m. just so she could claim she worked late. This particular email was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak. Per our discussion, please ensure all outstanding tasks are completed by end of day tomorrow. Prioritize efficiency and adhere strictly to company protocols. Failure to comply will result in disciplinary action. Now, here's the thing. Karen and I had not discussed anything. In fact, she'd been dodging my requests for clarification on a major project for weeks. But hey, she said to adhere strictly to company protocols, and I was about to take that very seriously. The project in question was a client proposal worth $2 million. Karen had handed it to me at the last minute, dumped a mountain of incomplete data on my desk, and vanished into her daily strategy meetings, which, according to office gossip, involved napping in her car. The deadline was tight, and I needed her sign-off on several key decisions, but every time I tried to corner her, she'd wave me off with a dismissive, "Just handle it." So, I did. I followed the company protocols to the letter. The 47-page employee handbook was my Bible, and I treated it like one. Every decision, every email, every step of the process was documented, time-stamped, and approved by the appropriate department heads. Except Karen, of course, because she was unavailable. The proposal was a Frankenstein's monster of red tape. It included every redundant form, every unnecessary approval, and every bureaucratic hoop the company had ever dreamed up. It was inefficient, bloated, and exactly what Karen had asked for. When I finally submitted the proposal, I attached a detailed report outlining every step I'd taken, complete with timestamps and screenshots. I even included a cheerful note. Per your instructions, I adhered strictly to company protocols. Let me know if you need anything else. Karen didn't respond. 2 days later, all hell broke loose. The client was furious. The proposal was a mess, filled with contradictory information and nonsensical requirements. They accused us of wasting their time and pulled out of the deal. The $2 million contract evaporated overnight, and the fallout was immediate. Karen, of course, tried to throw me under the bus. She stormed into the CEO's office, waving my email like a smoking gun. "This is unacceptable," she screeched. I explicitly told her to prioritize efficiency. But I was ready. I calmly pulled out my meticulously documented timeline, complete with every ignored email and unanswered request. I even had audio recordings of our conversations, legal in our state as long as one party consents. Thanks, employee handbook. The CEO's face went from red to purple as he realized what had happened. Karen was fired on the spot. But the drama didn't end there. As Karen packed up her desk, she shot me a look that could melt steel. "You think you've won?" she hissed, "but you have no idea what you've just started." I laughed it off at the time. After all, I'd just taken down the office tyrant. But over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. First, my computer was hacked. Sensitive files were deleted, and someone tried to access my email. Then, I started receiving anonymous messages, vague threats about karma and payback. The final straw was when I found my car vandalized. The words, "Watch your back," scrawled across the windshield in bright red paint. I went to the police, but without concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. I started looking over my shoulder, jumping at every noise. Was Karen behind this? Or was it someone else? Someone who had a grudge against me for exposing Karen's incompetence. The mystery deepened when I discovered a hidden folder on Karen's old computer. It was filled with encrypted files, shady financial records, and a list of names, some of which I recognized as high-level executives at competing firms. I realized too late that Karen wasn't just a bad boss. She was involved in something much bigger, much darker, and by taking her down, I'd inadvertently put myself in the crosshairs. Now I'm stuck in a nightmare of corporate espionage, blackmail, and betrayal. I don't know who to trust, and every move I make feels like a step closer to disaster. So, Reddit, here's my question. How far would you go to follow the rules? And what would you do when those rules lead you into a trap?
Story 6.
I never thought I'd be the kind of man to post my personal life online, but I need to get this off my chest. Maybe someone out there has been through the same thing. Maybe someone out there has an answer I haven't found yet. Either way, here it is, the truth about how my marriage fell apart, piece by piece, and how I discovered the one thing that shattered my world. My wife, Sarah, and I met in college. From the moment I saw her, I was hooked. She had this way of making me feel like I was the most important person in the world. Every laugh, every touch, it all felt perfect. We dated for 5 years before I proposed, and when she said yes, I thought I had won life's ultimate prize. The first few years of marriage were amazing. We traveled, shared late-night talks, and planned our future together. But then, slowly, things started changing. It wasn't overnight, and it wasn't obvious at first. It was in the little things, the way she'd turn her phone screen away when I walked in, the way she started staying late at work more often, the way she stopped asking me how my day was. I told myself I was imagining things. Every couple goes through rough patches. I made excuses for her, convinced myself she was just stressed, that work was demanding. But the gut feeling never left me. One night, I decided to do something I had never done before. I checked her phone. I know. Invasions of privacy and all that. But something in me snapped. I had to know if my fears were real or just paranoia. And when I opened her messages, I found something I never expected. It wasn't another man. It was a group chat, one she had with her closest friends. My name popped up more times than I could count. And every single mention of me was dripping with resentment, frustration, and worst of all, contempt. The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, spoke about me like I was a burden, like she was stuck in some miserable life sentence she never wanted. I can't stand the way he talks sometimes. He's so predictable, so boring. I feel like I settled, like I could have done better. That last one nearly broke me. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding. My mind raced back to every moment we'd shared, every time she told me she loved me, every promise we made. Had it all been a lie? Had I been living in some illusion while she secretly regretted choosing me? I put her phone back and went to bed, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed time to think. The next few days were agony. I watched her smile at me, touch my hand, kiss me goodbye, all while knowing what she really thought of me when I wasn't around. I considered confronting her, but then I asked myself, what would that accomplish? She wasn't cheating, she wasn't being openly cruel, she just didn't love me the way I loved her. And maybe she never did. That was the hardest part. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way she avoided serious conversations, the way she never really apologized when we argued, the way she didn't laugh at my jokes anymore. Had she been feeling this way for years? Did she ever truly want this life? Or did she just pick the safe option and resent me for it? I was angry, not at her, but at myself. I had been so blind, so desperate to hold on to the illusion of happiness that I ignored the reality staring me in the face. A few weeks later, I sat her down. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I just asked, "Are you happy?" She looked at me, startled. "What do you mean?" "Are you happy with me, with us, with this marriage?" There was a pause, a long one, and then she sighed. "I don't know." And that was all I needed to hear. We talked, really talked. For the first time in years, we were honest with each other. She admitted that she had doubts even before we got married, but pushed them aside because she thought love was supposed to feel like that it was normal to have these thoughts. But over time, those doubts grew into resentment, and she didn't know how to stop it. I asked her if she wanted to fix it, if she wanted to try. She hesitated. And in that moment, I knew. Love isn't supposed to feel like an obligation. It's not supposed to be something you force yourself into. I loved her, but I deserved someone who loved me the same way in return. And she deserved the same. We separated a month later. It was painful. Some days I still wake up expecting to see her next to me. But in the end, I think we both knew it was the right choice. So here I am, telling my story to strangers on the internet. Not because I want sympathy, but because maybe someone else out there is living in the same illusion I was. Maybe you're ignoring the signs, convincing yourself that love is supposed to feel like work, like sacrifice, like endurance. But the truth is, love should feel like home. And if it doesn't, maybe it's time to walk away.